A black woman is targeted by a racist cop in a courtroom, but a call from the White House changes everything. What happens next will leave you speechless. Sarah walked into the courtroom that day like anyone else, ready to fight for what was right. But the moment she sat down, all eyes turned to her. Not because of what she said or did, but because of the color of her skin. A white cop approached her, his tone sharp and dismissive. "You need to leave," he said, his words cutting through the quiet room. No explanation. No reason. Just the weight of prejudice hanging in the air. Sarah froze for a second, her heart pounding. She wasn't causing a scene. She wasn't breaking any rules. She was just there. But the cop didn't care. He saw her as a problem, not a person. "On what grounds?" she asked, her voice steady but firm. The cop hesitated, his face tightening. He didn't have an answer, and everyone in the room could feel it. The tension grew as the cop doubled down, threatening to arrest her if she didn't comply. People started whispering, pulling out their phones to record. Sarah's mind raced. She knew this wasn't just about her. It was about every person who'd ever been treated unfairly because of who they are. But standing her ground came with a cost. Would she be dragged out in handcuffs? Would anyone even care? The room felt like it was closing in as the cop reached for his radio. Sarah's hands trembled, but she didn't back down. "I have every right to be here," she said, her voice louder now. The cop's face turned red, and for a moment, it seemed like things were about to spiral out of control. But here's the thing. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Would you stay and fight, or walk away to avoid the confrontation? As the cop moved closer, the courtroom buzzed with tension. No one stepped in. No one spoke up. It was just Sarah, standing alone against a system that had already decided she didn't belong. And then, just as the cop reached for her arm, something unexpected happened. But that's where the story takes a turn you won't see coming. The question is, why do you think the cop targeted her in the first place? Was it just blind prejudice or something deeper? Think about it, because what happens next will change everything. Sarah stood there, her heart racing but her voice steady. The cop's hand hovered near his radio, his face twisted in frustration. The courtroom was silent, except for the faint hum of phones recording the scene. Sarah knew this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone watching, everyone who'd ever been treated unfairly. She took a deep breath and repeated herself, louder this time. "I have every right to be here. What law am I breaking?" The cop hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. He didn't have an answer, and the silence made it even more obvious. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. "You're causing a disturbance," he snapped, though the room was dead quiet. Sarah's jaw tightened. She wasn't going to let him rewrite the truth. "I'm sitting here, just like everyone else," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "If anyone's causing a disturbance, it's you." The people in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, while others kept their cameras rolling. No one stepped in. No one said a word. It was just Sarah, standing alone against a system that had already decided she didn't belong. The cop reached for her arm, his grip firm, and started pulling her toward the door. Sarah's mind raced. Should she resist? Should she let him take her out? What would happen if she fought back? But then, something unexpected happened. As the cop led her toward the exit, a voice rang out from the back of the room. "Let her go." It was a lawyer, someone Sarah had never met, but his tone was firm. The cop froze, his grip loosening slightly. "This is a public courtroom," the lawyer continued. "You have no right to remove her without cause." The cop's face turned red, but he didn't let go. Instead, he barked into his radio, calling for backup. The room erupted into murmurs. Sarah's heart sank. This was spiraling out of control, and she didn't know how to stop it. But then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it at first, but it kept buzzing, over and over. Finally, she managed to pull it out, and her eyes widened. The caller ID read, "Unknown number." She answered, her voice shaky. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. "Sarah, this is the White House. We've seen what's happening, and we're here to help." The cop stared at her, confused, as Sarah's expression shifted from fear to disbelief. What could the White House possibly do in this moment? And more importantly, what would happen next? Here's a question for you. If you were in that courtroom, would you have stepped in to help Sarah, or would you have stayed silent? Think about it, because sometimes the smallest actions can change everything. The moment Sarah said, "This is the White House," the entire courtroom froze. The cop's grip on her arm loosened, his face a mix of confusion and disbelief. The murmurs in the room grew louder, and even the lawyer who had spoken up earlier looked stunned. Sarah held the phone tightly, her hands trembling as the voice on the other end continued. "Stay calm, Sarah. We're handling this." The cop, still unsure if this was some kind of trick, barked into his radio again, demanding backup faster. But before he could finish, his own radio crackled to life. A stern voice came through, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Stand down." Immediately, the cop's face went pale. He let go of Sarah completely, stepping back as if she'd suddenly become untouchable. Sarah stood there, her heart pounding, as the voice on the phone reassured her. "You're safe now. We've contacted the local authorities, and this situation is being addressed." The room was silent, everyone holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Then, the courtroom doors burst open. Two high-ranking officers walked in, their expression serious. They went straight to the cop who had targeted Sarah. "You're being suspended, effective immediately," one of them said, his voice firm. "An investigation is already underway." The cop's face turned red, then white. He tried to protest, but the officers cut him off. "This isn't up for debate." They escorted him out of the room, leaving everyone in stunned silence. Sarah stood there, still holding the phone, her mind racing. She couldn't believe what had just happened. The lawyer who had spoken up earlier approached her, his voice gentle. "Are you okay?" Sarah nodded, though she was still shaking. "I think so," she said quietly. The lawyer smiled. "You just did something incredible. This isn't just about you. It's about everyone who's ever been treated unfairly. You stood up, and because of that, things are going to change." As the reality of what had happened began to sink in, Sarah felt a wave of emotions, relief, pride, but also exhaustion. She had been through so much in such a short amount of time. But she knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a much bigger conversation. The video of the incident had already gone viral, and people everywhere were talking about it. Sarah's courage had sparked a movement, and it was clear that this story wasn't going to fade away anytime soon. But here's a question for you. If you were in that courtroom, watching everything unfold, how would you have reacted? Would you have been shocked, angry, or inspired? Think about it, because sometimes the most powerful moments come when we least expect them. If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be heard. Please note this story is a work of fiction only for education and entertainment purposes.